Welcome everyone to another webinar series with us, Epoch, where we feature folks in employee experience, employee programs that are experts within their space, that are deep thinkers. Super excited to be spotlighting Chris today. Before we dive in, as a quick note as to why we host these webinars, it's because we've been seeing a lot of shifts in employee experience, employee programs, especially with there's the rise of remote and hybrid work. So what we know to be true is sharing learnings is super crucial during times of change like this. And Chris is an excellent person that we're super excited to be spotlighting today. So Chris brings over 10 years of experience within learning and development. And from today's conversation, you'll see why he's one of the most forward thinkers within the space. And before we get started, if you all want, maybe drop in the chat in terms of how you're feeling with an emoji today. There was also a timing discrepancy on some of the audience's calendars in terms of when the webinar start time is. So that is something to note. But with that said, in terms of what we'll be covering today is Chris's thoughts on creating engaging learning programs, defining and measuring success for L&D initiatives in a hybrid environment, and much, much more. So with that said, super excited to just dive right into it. So Chris, before we go into our Q&A and the questions that we prepped together, it'd be great for you to just share a little bit about your background and maybe why you got into this learning space.
Yeah, man. So I love the question, and I challenge anybody that's any field or industry that you're in. It's a question that I actually ask learners, new hires, even all the way up to CEOs and owners. That way, everybody has this deep dive into the why are we actually doing what we're doing? Because when I was a kid, I always thought I'd be something else. So luckily, thinking about that question, I have this elaborate story because as I identified, man, when did it all start for L&D? Why did I get into it? It goes as far back as me being 8 years old. And so I'll save that story for another time. But what I will say is this: the reason why I stay in learning and development, the employee experience overall, or customer experience, I've been in that industry for just over 30 years, but 10 plus years within learning and development itself, and it's been the last 10 years. The reason I stay within this part of the industry for so long is because of the different hats that I've worn throughout those 30 plus years. What I found is like the most challenging moments, there's so many challenging moments that you face in your career chapters as you go through life. But one of the most challenging ones that happens is actually typically within your first 30 to 60 or 90 days. Because there's this whole onboarding piece. You're trying to make a mark when you actually start. You're wanting to evolve with purpose and be the best that you can be while trying to learn, the company that you're in. And so as I've experienced that several different times in several different industries, being able to actually hear from others of what's going well for them, what's not, and hearing the challenges that are within those first 1 to 3 months, I come to realize that a lot of the impact, both the positive and the negative impacts, actually typically happen because of the recruiting, onboarding, and a lot of it because of what happens in the L&D organization. And so hearing what is working and what's not, and in my mind, I was like, man, I could actually do that. I understand why you don't feel safe or why you don't feel comfortable, why you don't feel like you can actually get this down, and why this journey of learning has actually been very difficult for someone like myself or anybody else that's going through that. And taking a chance and just stepping into the L&D organization and using what I know that people have gone through to try and make it a better experience and being successful at that. And then just seeing everybody go from very scared and timid on day one, and in that same day one, moving forward in the first 90 days, just being so confident and laying down the foundation for them to feel like, man, you were hired for a reason and you can do this. Let me give you some information that I need you to be able to know, but I want you to bring your sugar and spice to make it nice your way. Because I didn't bring you to sound like me. We hired you because there's something about you that's special. How do you break that open for everybody? I think I found a way to do that for myself and for companies that I've worked with for these past 10 years. And that's what I'm excited to share today. And hopefully, impact somebody else that's out there in the L&D organization to do the same thing. But it's because of that experience that I see that we're creating for everybody that walks through our doors, whether it's in previous companies or my current company at Bluevine, we do that time and time again, and it's something that's exciting to see. Especially when they come in, they're like, "Wow, is it really going to be that good?" Or like people have told us it is, and it is. I want them to prove me wrong and give me feedback if I am, but we've been pretty successful at doing it. That's what keeps me here is creating that experience and seeing people go through that.
That's awesome. And I know L&D looks a bit different across different organizations. So, Chris, could you share a little bit about what it looks like at Bluevine right now? I know we talked about you own onboarding and a few other pieces.
Yeah, so the great thing is when I had initially started with Bluevine, we were that's the crazy thing about fintech. Fintech itself is fairly new. 2007, 2008, when you saw the market crash, you're seeing the housing market declining and crash. That's where fintech was born. There are a lot of innovative people that and entrepreneurs that were like, man, we could do banking better. We could give a better experience, and let's use technology to do that. Hence the word fintech or financial technology came in the moments where everybody's like, man, what do we do? Like these banks, these legacy banks and traditional banks we go to, I don't know if I can actually put my trust back into it. And we found a way, fintech found a way to actually build confidence again in the financial world using technology. And so when we are doing it here at Bluevine, when even though it may look like a big company, like a lot of fintech companies they look great, but they're still in the building phases. Even if it's 10 years down the line, there's still a lot to build because we're, in comparison to an American Express, a Goldman Sachs, a Discover Card, there's a lot to build. And the great thing about it is the types of people that actually join, like at Blue Line, for example, that's where the mindset is. It's like, man, we got to go to work. We got to make this grow. And there's a lot of pivots. We pivot so much that we should be in the NBA. Like we're just like pivoting left and right. Um, but it's that mindset of knowing that we need to grow together. We're going to operate as our own owners and make sure that we take accountability for what we're overseeing. And so for myself, it was in the L&D organization. And I was been blessed to work with some great people at the very beginning. It was just me and one other person who she brought me on board and showed me the ropes. And then together we had to build what we had. And there was a lot more building. So then we actually had to scale up just a little bit more. But now I'm on a team of five of us. And between the five of us, we're just making miracles happen. Within the last 2 years, it's a night and day difference of what's taking place because we had to take time first to find the right people. So the great thing about it is we have an overall, and I think usually L&D organizations, depending on how big the company is, you'll have the L&D org that actually oversees everything for the entire company, the enterprise itself, and then you have specific ones depending on departments or legs of the company. So for us, the part that I'm in is our customer support, our banking support side. We have that has a direct connection into our L&D organization. So depending on the focus that an L&D organization needs, you may have special focuses depending on what departments need, or it could be an overall view of the entire landscape that's involved with the company. So for us, we have two parts to it. One that oversees the entire organization, and then right now, our leg that falls off of it, or that is a direct link to it, because of how big our banking and lending side is with Bluevine.
That's awesome. And that's super helpful as well, just to understand the structure in which you all operate and how you think about it. And I know you
Yeah.
mentioned that there was a lot of building out in the early days of what L&D means for Bluevine and for your team. So what does that look like? I know you facilitate sessions. Are you creating the content? Is it mostly live learning, async learning? What does it look like for you right now?
Yeah, great question. So for us personally, and I think it may translate it and transcend to many companies that are out there. Um, we're always looking at what the company needs are. So there's always a training needs analysis that takes place. We have to figure out, or we initially had to figure out where does the company need to be, where are we at today, and then it's up to us to be able to help figure out how do we fill in the gaps. There's learning that has to happen across along the way, and we have to figure out how to do that the best way. What we found, one of the needs that we had, for example, was there was a need for an LMS, a learning management system. That way we could actually have async learning along with in-class facilitation, and then be able to even have upskilling that takes place. And every company that's scaling up always recommend having the best LMS that fits for you. And there's so many options out there.
So
Like
many.
I remember, yeah, I remember, early on, 30 years ago, there was no LMS option like there is today. When we were actually in the hunt for an LMS, there was a lot of studying into it. So, it's trying to figure out, well, listing what we needed, because, it's kind of like going to the store hungry. You should eat a meal before you go to the store, because if you don't, you're going to buy everything. So it's like us trying to figure out our meal that we ate before we shopped for an LMS was, what do we have now? Where do we want to be? And what is actually going to be needed to get there? What will we need to get there? And because we had a good shopping list, if you will, it allowed us to actually tailor down to the LMSs that were out there. Still, there was a lot to look through, but the nice thing about it is we had different people from different departments that were able to step in with us and figure out, well, we know we're going to need learning for everybody across the board. Um, how much of it is going to be async learning? What types of learning are there going to need to be? Assessments, feedbacks, the data that would be needed as well. Can we integrate into systems that we have? That's the entire laundry, the shopping list that we're looking for, and matching that up to what we needed. And because of that, they had to pass security tests as well. So once we were able to look through and listen to the sales pitches that everybody had, practice inside of some of the LMS systems, we were able to make the best decision for our company, which at this time was WorkRamp, and they
Yeah.
give us everything that we need. Now, in the future, it can change, but it may be the far future because of the time and effort that's put into what we have. But based off of everything we needed, we feel like we made the best decision there. Previous companies that I've been in, similar approaches to that also, and trying to figure out how extravagant do we need, some things that are out there that are just beyond what you thought, beyond your imagination, but not necessarily fits the bill. So we luckily found something that did fit us.
That's awesome. And I know a lot of people that are joining in today might not have an LMS or an LXP, or are thinking about like moving around into a different one. So when you think about your tech stack, when is the best time to like pull the plug and either switching into a system or getting a system? What's the thinking process?
Man, that's a great question, and I haven't. Luckily, I haven't had to fall into that decision making. Even with the company, I had to make a decision of pulling the plug on it. More so enhancing it. So when you are, if we take a step back and look at it, it's
Yeah.
actually being honest with ourselves and saying, are we meeting the needs of the company with what we have? And based off what we have, I remember early on when we got started with an LMS in a previous company, just building the content that was in it was such a beast that I was like, man, let's just pull the plug on this and let's go with the other company because they said they'll build it for us. So it's like,
Mm,
again, having the right mindset that did we are we doing what we need to? Do we know exactly what we need first before we even have a salesperson come in and show us what their LMS can do? And being very strategic and thoughtful in that process. And when we are, then we bring the sales folks in. And once we know that we checked off all the boxes, trusting in our choice that we made, and then going in full gung ho. And when the times get tough, it's like turning back to that list and saying, no, they do fit the bill. I just need to take a little bit more time to build it. The nice thing about these LMS systems currently as well is they always have somebody that you can reach out to for help and support. Do that. Sometimes, there's this pride thing where, no, I'll figure it out, or it's just because of habit that we'll want to take a look at it. Sometimes it is okay to just take a back step, step back real quick, call the your person that you can actually reach out to, your point of contact for help, and they can actually make things a lot faster for you also. And that's a great thing about the current LMSs is I've noticed there's always a support system. Lean on that. I guess the time that you would know that you have outgrown that is when it's not fulfilling the needs that you have. Constantly, we're always looking at feedback for ourselves in every company I've been at. And so
mm,
when we look at the feedback of, you know, we're taking feedback from representatives, we're taking feedback from executives, anybody that we are assigning modules and content to, there's always an assessment at the end. There's always a survey, like, how was this on a scale of 1 to 5? And not just doing that because, you're supposed to measure, but doing it with full intent that you're going to research that when it comes back to you. And that's what I love about my current team. Every time we get a survey back, we always deep dive into it. We look at the good and we celebrate that, but um, we're so excited to see somebody say, man, this training was not the best, and this is the reason why, because we want to know why wasn't it. We're really curious. We take feedback as a gift. And so take the time to look through that feedback. That feedback will let you know, have you really outgrown it? Or a lot of times currently what we found is it's not because the LMS, it's because the way we wrote the content. And all we have to do is just rewrite the content, put a little bit more engagement. Maybe there was too much engagement. And based off of feedback, we've been able to adjust very well over and over and over again, where it just gets better every time. So if I do get to the point or ever experience it where we actually do pull the plug on something, or I do, I'll absolutely let you know. But when you are, because of how thoughtful we were in the actual review process for the LMS, even in previous companies, we've been pretty successful in choosing the right one.
That's awesome. And a follow-up to that, I know we'll get more in depth into like feedback and how you think about that, but what are some, how do you prompt the most like helpful slash productive feedback from folks? Are there certain questions that you find effective or different ways of surveying? Because I think a lot of people in the audience and people that we work with, it's A, hard to get feedback. And B, like, are we asking the right things?
Yeah, man, that's a really good question, Jade. So the feedback is hard to get. When you go to a restaurant, they're gonna ask you for feedback. When you are on the line with your internet company, they're gonna say, "Hey, would you like to stay after for?" The thing about that feedback is they're asking you for your time. So when you're asking for somebody to provide time, their time to give you feedback when they don't necessarily need to, I guess the question that I always ask myself is, did I do everything that I can to have them know that I respect them, that I respect their time, and that I am trying to give them my whole heart and my whole effort? And that one thing that I'm just asking in return is just for feedback. If we actually build it that way, where you build the conversation up front, and you're treating them the way that you want to be treated, but you're creating this learning environment where they're fully engaged with it, that's something that they're looking forward to. And what I like doing is at the very beginning is pumping everybody up. We'll inspire, we'll motivate, and at the end we'll celebrate. When we celebrate, whether it's for because we've overcome something or celebrating something because we've achieved something great, it's being able to let them know, man, this was such a great experience. When I see it in everybody, I'd love to know your feedback. What happened that was good, but I really am interested in what didn't happen that wasn't. And I want you to take the time, please. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I just need a little bit more. If you can give me 5 minutes and give me feedback and let me know what was it that worked and what was it that didn't. And when we change it that way, instead of it being like a phone call that I'm calling in upset because my Wi-Fi is not working, now they're going to ask me for my time. They actually took the time to know me. They took the time to actually care about me and my learning and what actually matters to me. You know what, Chris? I'll give you 2 minutes. I'll give you 5 minutes, and let me be intentful with that as well. And what's cool about that, Jade, is it's not just Chris, you did great. I actually had one that was honestly it was Chris, good try. Like you said that you're gonna do good, but these are some things that could have helped me more. And what was crazy about that, Jade, is everybody else was a 5. This person was a 3. So lucky it wasn't a detractor. But the great thing about it is it helped me grow as a person in the learning and development environment to understand, oh gosh, I thought everybody wanted to engage by speaking. This person just wanted more time. Can you give me an opportunity to speak during chat? Because I don't want to talk. I don't want to engage in this way. So I had to think about it. Man, there's different learners. Not everybody's audio and visual, not everybody's application and audio. How do we actually make sure that we're approaching all of it? It's that feedback. And the more you take that feedback to heart, as that person stays in that company with you and they see that feedback actually applied, man, the amount of feedback that you'll get moving forward is just so valuable, and it becomes more powerful because they're very specific on what's working for them and what's not, because they know you'll do something with it. When I call my internet company, they're like, "Oh, your feedback matters." But if my internet keeps getting shut down every Friday at the same time for the last 3 years, did you really take my feedback? Like, do you really care what I'm saying? So build an environment of learning, build an environment that I take feedback just like I want you to take feedback. Respect their time, they'll give you their time. And when they do, respect that as well by taking that feedback to heart, changing what you can, reaching out to them and letting them know what that next step is going to look like. Because they
Mm.
know there's a change that happens because of feedback, they'll absolutely be, that'll be something that they look forward to, is just giving you feedback.
That's awesome. And Chris, I know you mentioned that there's async and synchronous learning that happen at Bluevine and from your previous experiences. And for async, it sounds like sometimes you'll create content. So maybe we'll dive into synchronous learning first, because I know from our conversations, you do such a great job in engaging like new hires and folks going through trainings. Like I know you mentioned earlier today, you had a really engaged new hire class. Could you share with
Mm.
everyone like why you think they were so engaged with you and what are you looking for in terms of the next onboarding sessions?
Man, I love that. So I would love for us to ask ourselves, have you ever been to a training where when you walk into it, you have this trainer that's just so excited, like all they're doing is they're just pumping you up, and that's great. And then it dies down as the times go on. Have you ever
Mhm.
been to a training where the trainer is actually, I need us to get this down, so let's get to business, and that's who that is. There's these types of trainers that are out there that do all of that, and sometimes they're more of a boss than they are a leader. I mean, when I talk about leadership, it's like being able to be open for feedback so you know what's working, what's not. And that's absolutely what will help you grow. One thing that I've realized from, the years of being in this industry is people want to be a part of that journey. They don't want to just sit back. I hated when I would go to training and I would sit in a seat and I just hear the trainer talk about it, right? It was like, from what I understand, because I never went to college, but like looking at it, it'd be like sitting there and you just have this lecture. It's this lecture led, and you see it, right? ILTs, instructor led trainings that are happening, but they want to be a part of that journey. If you can keep them as a part of that journey from the very beginning, man, it changes things. So one of the very first thing that we do is we have this icebreaker that allows everybody to open up. Tell me your name, where are you from, why did you choose our company, what's bringing you here, and then we'll ask a question, something as simple as, if you could go to any concert and have VIP access, past, present, whoever it may be, who would it be and why? Then people start opening up. Not only are they opening up about themselves and you get to know a little bit about them personally, but it's getting their brain juices flowing to start thinking. I don't care what you're thinking about. I just need you to start thinking and hearing my voice and your voice as we talk and we think together. The very next thing that we do once we start opening up is we do what's called an expectation piece. And I've been doing this for, man, every company I've been a part of for the last 10 plus years. And what it looks like is this, Jade. I know that you're learning, that you've actually been able to identify several different ways that you learn that's best for you. There's probably several different things that happen in your life, in your career chapters, that made learning and your training even better. I want you to expect that from me. But what were those things? And I'll actually have a screen up that's blank. And at the very top, it just says, what are your expectations to be the best you? You can name title whatever you want to. They'll use the annotate tool inside of Zoom, and I'll have everybody just write down, what do you expect of me? Chris, I want you to be transparent with me. Tell me how I'm really doing. I want you to have one-on-ones with me. I want it to be fun. I want you to engage. I need you to be clear with the expectations. They'll write everything that they want to write. I will absolutely give them that space. If it takes another page, I'm not going to say, no, we got to fit it on one page. Because again, what I'm trying to have them do is give me everything about you that you know you need in order for you to be successful. It'll get down to corny things or like things as simple as, I need snacks. And it's like, well, lucky for you, we got a kitchen full of snacks. Take some home with you if you're, if it's because we're a hybrid model, take some home with you and use that on that day. Then I'll take the time to actually ask them, hey, Johnny, when you say communication, what do you mean by that? Then they'll break it down what communication means to them. Sarah, what does it mean when you say being open and transparent? I think I have an idea, but I'd like to hear that from you. So not only are they giving me what their expectations are, but they're elaborating what they expect from me. Then what I'll do is I'll reveal my top four expectations. I need you to be on time, always. If you're, and when I say early, I need you to be a little bit early. Like I need you to be on time because there's so much that we have to cover. I respect your time. I'm asking you to respect mine. I'm always gonna have their cameras on, Jade. Like every class that I'm in, their cameras have to be on. And the reason why it has to be on is because if we were inside of a training room, you can't just put a block and say, don't look at my face. Like you have to be in the training room. Just because we're
Yeah.
in a hybrid model doesn't mean that, it changes that. And that's one of the easiest ways to engage is face to face. And this is the closest that I can get is that. So that's one of the main expectations that we have too. But just figuring out what are your main expectations that need to be had in that class for them to be successful based off of you. but let them be a part of that expectations. Let them be a part of that journey. Because then what we do next, Jade, is crazy because I'll save that into the slide. I'll actually go to the next page and it has all of their names and a signature line. And I'll tell them, when I found the queen of my life, I told her that I would love her through death. Death could not stop me. I will love her through eternity. Then we went to the courthouse and we were supposed to sign. I was like, oh, it's real. Like, I really need a sign that I'm going to love my wife. And it was funny because I'll sign it. When I do, there's something special about a signature. But
Yeah.
everybody, Jay, takes their mouse and they sign and say, I will keep these expectations. Then we take a picture of everybody.
Wow.
So now it shows a picture of them. You have a signature of them, and the expectations are not me. It's not just Bluevine. It's us. Because this class, in order for them to be successful, it's two people there. It's me and it's them. And I want them to be a part of it. When you do that, I don't even have to tell them, hey, man, I need you to be on time. I just need to pull up the expectations and say, hey, when we said that we signed this, I promised you I'd be on time. How are you doing with this? Man, Chris, I'm sorry. Like I'm just going through some things and I'm like, break it down for me, man. Like I want to be a part of that journey. By the end of 2 weeks, by the end of 3 weeks or even 4, I don't know why, but people cry. Like people cry in our classroom for good reasons. And they're
At
like,
the end of
oh,
a
that was just the
training?
best experience. Oh yeah. Every single class, Jade, there are people that are crying that they're gonna miss the training experience. And what I do is I'll walk into the with our stakeholders and like, we built them up. Like the only thing you need to do is keep the momentum going. You ain't all you gotta do is just remove the red tape, let them do exactly what they've been doing for the last 4 weeks, and you'll have a superstar. Like that's the way it is. And the reason why is not because of me only, it's because they built the expectations, they signed it, they took a picture with it, and they actually lived up to it. And we celebrate that. And because of just that alone, because that's the very first thing we do, I don't have to coach them. Like they know what they agreed to. And if I do, I just need to show them, hey, do you remember this picture? What about this thing? How's it going with this? No, yeah, you're right. You're right. Because they're the ones that built it with me. So that alone has been something that's been money for us in every company that I've been with to create a hell of an experience for every learner, from owners and CEOs all the way to somebody that's going to be taking phone calls. It's always worked for us.
That is crazy. And I love that tip. Just get people's buy-in and ownership from the get-go. Like, how do
Yeah.
the trainings look like though for you in terms of Bluevine? Because it sounds like you do new hire orientation and onboarding, and then I guess like ongoing trainings as well that go on sometimes for weeks.
Yeah, great question. So onboarding would be, the longest training. That can take, 3 to 4 weeks, along with OJT, on the job training, and
Okay.
activities and engagements like that. But training itself, like in classroom training, it's about 2 weeks altogether. And usually in the fintech space, it's about that time frame. Even in the previous company, we had to go from 6 weeks and actually boil it down and condense it to a 2 week time frame, which we luckily were able to do because of technology. So onboarding is always going to be a little bit longer. They'll have async learning along with
Mm,
lecture led. A lot of engagement that happens in there, and the engagement that happens, we'll actually use the LMS. So let's run something. Let's do an assessment. Let's run something. Let's do a knowledge check. Let's run something. That way, there's this bouncing in between, and you're not just sitting in a classroom listening to somebody speak. We're using
mm,
tools inside of Zoom, like the annotate tool, the polls, being able to actually chat when you need to chat. When it comes to on the floor learning or in production learning, our L&D organization, they'll make sure that everybody gets all the training that they need, from compliance training, new things that are happening, things that we need people to be aware of. If there's updates and processes and procedures, we do that as well. The cool thing is the async learning, in addition to what we need everybody to be doing with the time frame, there's ones that don't have time frames. Like, what if I'm an agent and I want to be the next manager? How do I do that? It's going to take you time. But we have elements within the LMS that are built in so that you can build skills. For time management, for example, is a transferable skill. So you can take a course about time management. Project management is something that's even bigger than that. So you can start taking an LMS course that'll start the building blocks of project management. But then we're always showing them a path of how you communicate with your manager. The manager will partner with them. Then we start doing, taking a test drive for some of the, I want to be in this department. Do you? Like, go and take it for a test drive. Let me set up an hour, go sit next to them, see what they're doing. Sometimes they come back like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to stay here. Or they'll come back and say, I do want to do that. Now we got to figure out what are some skills that you can use to get there. And instead of us having to build time into it, they can take ownership of their own of their own learning and their own growth by simply logging into the LMS and already having courses that are built for them on their own time. So async with a time limit because it's something that you need to do, and then async learning for yourself when you want to just evolve with purpose and taking your time to build your own career.
That's awesome. And I guess like with that, because there's so many to your point, like different learning paths, how do you how do you think about when people are not engaged with a certain like either like live training or just the learning path that like you've set out for them?
Mm, man, that's a tough one, especially when they're not. The So 2 classes ago, and several times throughout my career, I faced it where this energy that I'm trying to bring, I'm trying to level it out, so it's not too much.
Yeah.
Because in a classroom, I feel like we need more. But there are some times where I'm fully engaged with the class, and the class itself may not be fully engaged, or at least I don't think they are. So there have been people in my life that I've met when they're excited, they just smile. But there's other people when I meet that are excited, they're yelling and they're hooting and they're hurrahing. So, what does success look like for engagement? That's where that feedback comes into play, and that's where being able to do check-ins also. So, I'll always make it a thing to actually meet with everybody and see how everything is going. But I still have to instill engaging opportunities. So, for example, something as reading a slide allows somebody to just read out loud, allowing somebody to actually engage with either making a statement vocally or sharing insight vocally, or at least using the chat. If I notice somebody's using the chat all the time, that's where I'm going to start actually needing to know. All right, in the chat, I'm going to put a poll. Everybody respond there. That way, the person that always is responding via chat doesn't feel left out, and they're like, "Dang man, everybody's always communicating out loud, but I'm always doing it through the chat." They don't have to feel like they're left out because I'll actually tailor it to that. So sometimes it's in the chat, sometimes it's in the poll, sometimes I still need you to vocalize it. Like taking into account the way that everybody is engaging, because for me, engagement means this face to face, cameras on, I need to hear your voice. But if somebody's full engagement really is through the chat, I need to be cognizant of that. And if I can do that for them out of nowhere, they're actually going to give that time to me. Like, Chris, you respected me by giving me the opportunity to just communicate in chat. And all of a sudden, you'll see this. I have something, and it's like, oh, they're going to talk now because now they're pushing boundaries. They're able to actually push beyond what they wanted to do, which is being in the back. Nobody look at me. Let me just get through training, and I'll take the phone calls on my own time. And they're able to actually start engaging. Again, it really just comes down to the respect that you'll have for them, giving and living up to the expectations, and then consistency. Like if I come in with 100% and nobody gives it back to me, if I come in the next day upset, okay, well, since nobody wants to engage, let's just, that's the wrong approach. But if I can
Yeah.
keep consistent myself no matter what, it always happens. Like without fail, even the classes that don't want to engage, I'll always have that person finally at the very end sometimes at the 11th hour, they'll finally come out and say something. And that's when I know, okay, words, they're ready to go. Everything else looks good. Um, but that consistency and being able to have them do it. Until then, give them opportunities to read, give them opportunities to engage in chat, give them opportunities to actually fill out a form, um, fill out an assessment, the surveys and feedback, and then at least one-on-one, like one-on-one with them, gives them an opportunity to just speak with you. Maybe it's simply because they don't want to speak in front of an entire class, but they're okay with the one-on-one, which is why they maybe still be okay talking to a customer, because it's only a one-on-one rather than an entire classroom full of people. Um, those are different approaches that we've done that have been successful.
That's awesome. And Chris, like how do you prepare before a either like new class of hires or just for a learning session?
Yeah, there's a lot of praying. No, there's so in order for us to do that, we I remember early on, like always guessing, saying, "Oh man, the last time we did, I think we did this, this, and this." The nice thing about technology nowadays is you just make a list, so that we know that there's always something to do 2 weeks ahead of time, a week ahead of time, and then the day before. So we're
Mm,
always looking at these lists just to make sure, do we send the invites out that need to be sent? Is the technology piece, like, are those set up? Do we have the seats set up? Is everything done correctly? And there's this checklist that we go through. So 2 weeks, one week, and then a couple of days, if not a day before. Once we're in it, that should have eliminated any guesswork and everybody should be ready to hit the ground running. If not, then it should be minimal in in any pivots that you'll have to make. But those are typically going to be the preparations there. The most important preparation that we take is like on the ADDIE model or on the Agile model, is being able to actually take the feedback and readjust, revamp, change what you need to, update it based off of previous feedback. We don't always jump to, like, if one person out of 100 gave feedback to do something a different way, we're going to be cognizant of that, but it may not be, restructuring of an entire training. And when we're cognizant of that, it's just making a notation to gauge the audience. And then based off of the way that everybody's interacting, am I able to just speak to that or at least have a slide or something that's ready just in case somebody's not getting it? And it's because of that feedback that we receive. So feedback is going to be huge to creating a checklist that's absolutely going to be key in making it done correctly. But that's usually the step that makes things go smoothly before the class even runs.
And you mentioned as well now that we're hybrid, you're doing in classroom, like physically again, while still doing virtual as well. So,
Yeah.
how has that transition been? Are there any tips you have for the audience that are still doing fully remote learning? And for those who are transitioning back into hybrid, how to think about that too? Like any hot tips?
Yeah, man, that's such a good question. The hardest thing for L&D, especially on the facilitation side, when we're in a remote session or even if you're hybrid, and people are just getting back into the office, is the engagement aspect of it. I've heard it too many times. Like, you'll never get the same engagement in person in a remote session that you would in person, and I agree with that. But it doesn't mean that you don't try. And the feedback that we received and the results that we received have just proven it time and time again that you can still get um, great engagement. You can still get great experience or deliver great experiences through remote sessions. It's just you have to use more tools. In a classroom, for example, I'm from the hip hop days. Like, I'm a hip hop baby. And so one of the things when I'm in house, when it wasn't remote and it wasn't hybrid, it was always in office. Everybody learned how to break dance. Like, break dancing is my thing. I can't break dance anymore as like I used to. I'll break a bone or break my back. But everybody that went through my class, who went through my class because they knew how to break dance, at least what's called tutting. So it's like King Tut, you would do movements like that. And people would say, man, I ain't got no groove. Like, there's no way. I was like, yes, you can. This is a move that you're going to learn. And everybody does. So I couldn't do that over the screen like this because I can't walk up and show you what to do. But the engagement that I can do over remote are going to be those icebreakers, for example, thought-provoking questions. There are countless games online, for example, that you can do as well. But I like trying to tailor it back into what we're going to be learning, so that I can actually tap into that game. As a whenever we're trying to learn something that's brand new. But when you're doing a hybrid, whether it's hybrid or going back to work, if you're going back to work fully, the great thing there is you get to fully engage in a classroom. Make sure you take advantage of that. Like, uh, even if you have just engagement activities that you can do, something as simple as throwing candy to somebody that actually answered the question right. There's the celebration that happens there. Something as simple as that. One of my colleagues, she actually always gives high fives to people. Now, people don't feel comfortable with high fives. Like, nowadays, they have those clappers. Like, those are things that you can give out that are pretty cheap to get as well. If you're in a hybrid session, those work very well in a hybrid situation as well as in an in-classroom situation. When we're in a remote session like this, depending on what remote tool you're using, Zoom, for example, I love because of all the tools, the resources that are polls. You can do, polls, chat, annotation. There's a lot of that. Google Meets, same exact thing. Sometimes we'll be quirky with it, and we'll have everybody actually do a weird filter where you can be a cow, you can be a rabbit, you can be, so many different things. But
Yeah.
mixing it up like that, just for the sake of engagement, there's a lot of different tools and resources to do it that way.
I love that the filter one just like brings a bit of levity. People loosen up.
It does.
And I know we're almost hitting time, so everyone, if you have questions for Chris, please drop it in the chat or in the Q&A section. But I know we also wanted to talk about leadership buy-in because I think what we saw during layoffs, for example, when things were tough, sometimes L&D might get restructured. or you just have to really optimize your workflows. So I guess like how do you think about that? Like how do you think about leadership buy-in, making sure they're engaged, that L&D is really measuring success and being able to demonstrate it back?
Yeah. Man, I love that question, Jay, because I know I've been through companies that have done that restructured. And what
Yeah,
gets scary is L&D, depending on how much value they bring to the company, they're like one of the first ones to get cut, because they're like, well, that the manager can actually train them. But there's a difference in content delivery, which is what
yeah.
old school training was. Hey, sit next to this person, see what they do, hear what they say, and in a week, I'll have you do the same thing. That's content delivery. That's what AI is going to take over, if we actually stayed in there. But there's this different piece when it comes to the engagement that a human being to a human being can actually create. Kind of like with those examples I gave earlier from the icebreakers directly into expectations and bringing them along the path for that too. When it comes to that leadership buy-in, that training needs analysis is key. Like being able to
Mhm.
figure out what are we focused on just for the next quarter, maybe not even for the year, but just for the next quarter, based off what we're focused on the next quarter, where's the biggest opportunity at? And then it's us as an L&D organization trying to figure out how do we make that easier. The great thing about the L&D organization is we really are a support function. We support the business, we support the stakeholders. So what's the best way that we can support them through an L&D lens? And then it's taking what they actually need and building something quickly that allows them to see, hey man, this is how you could do it. So instead of, if you give us the opportunity to run this training, we could do the training in 1 week for everybody in the organization. We'll gain feedback from it, and I'd like us to test, or we'd like to measure that against where we're at right now. So you figure out what all the metrics are today. You'd have to build the hell out of this, and you can do it. Everybody I've been in with within the L&D organization, because you're not content delivery, you're learning and development. There's a different mindset there. So we build it. We build it from an L&D perspective, not just content delivery perspective. And when you do it that way and you involve the human aspect of it, that measurement that happens, you have to bring that in. And even if it's a percent better or 2% better, take the time to explain that that 2% was within 1 week. Imagine what'll happen if we continue to do that and build and just compound on that. And then get the feedback from the representatives as well. Hey, how did that training go for you? So now you have the feedback from the representatives that let the management team know, hey, this is what went really well for me. I'm looking forward to the next one. You have the measurement that'll happen for the next 30 days or so to see what the changes are. And then during that time frame, it's taking the feedback and rebuilding and revamping just to continue to get better. I know we're coming close to time, but one of my favorite movies with my kids to watch was Mulan, cartoon Mulan. And then on there, the emperor says, a
Cartoon
single grain
Mulan.
of rice, yeah, a single grain of rice will tilt the scale. Too many times I focused on, I need a pound of rice. I need the whole entire bag. But if I can just do a single grain of rice every single day in every single training, that's all that matters to tilt the scale in our favor. And that's all you're trying to do to get that buy-in from management. And when you do it the right way, man, they're on board with you. They love what you're doing. And then together you can actually make their team even better. And then all of a sudden it becomes this huge partnership that continues to build at a culture and an environment of learning.
Amazing, Chris. And just two quick last questions for you in terms of your mindset in this role with all that's evolving with L&D. To your point, there's so many different tools now. There's LMSs, there's LXP, there's different ways of engaging. So how do you like? What's your mindset within this role? How do you stay positive and feel that like you're on top of everything? Because it seems like you are, but I'm sure it's a lot.
Yeah, man, it is a lot. Yeah, so the very first question that you asked, Jade, I think is what matters a lot. It's like, why are you in this? What is the whole purpose of that? And for me, I've been through enough bad in my life, that I want to make sure that nobody has to go through that, especially when you're trying to make a good decision to start a new job so that you can get money for whatever it is. If it's just for you so you can build your own success, I want to help you with that. And I want to show you an easy path to do it. If you're going through something that's rough, man, I've probably been there before, but I'm not going to say, hey, you can do it because I did it. I just want to be there right next to you and have you understand, hey, I've been there before. What are you in this job for? And help them understand why they actually started this job here and then tap into that too. Mindset is such a huge thing where like grit became this huge buzzword for the last several years, but it really is true. Like pushing through as much as you can, being able to do all you can and then trusting that what you did was enough for the day and then letting that be. I love being able to go because I can't do that, take a bad experience to my house and put that out on my family because I love my family more than anything. But if I do my job because I know I'm doing it for my family, that's where my mindset always go to is my purpose and why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I know what I've been through. I'm doing it because I need my family to have what they need to have, and I'm doing it because I really genuinely enjoy people. And when you have that right mindset, it just shines through. Now you're always gonna have bad days, but it's that mindset that allows you to come back and say, "Yeah, today was a bad day, man, but it's not the rest of the day. I'm going to have a better day tomorrow." And then it's just making that choice. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's definitely always worth it, as you put your mind to it. You just got to keep doing it. Consistency is key. And the next thing you know, it becomes easier across the way. Until then, man, just trust the process and be consistent with it.
That's amazing, Chris. And with that, I know we are hitting time. So, Chris, for people that want to find you, how can they find you?
Yeah, man. It's you can I'm on LinkedIn at Christopher.Vanisi. If you just look up the last name Vanisi and just remember Chris was the first name, my picture is right there. It's an ugly mug. My mom loves the face. My wife does too. So,
I think
but
it's
you'll
a great
remember that
photo.
mug when you see it. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn is where I'm at. I don't really do social media stuff, but LinkedIn is my social media for me because I love interacting with business-minded folks. So please reach out to me. I'd love having these conversations and I'd love to converse with anybody that wants to carry it on.
Yeah. And with that, everyone, thank you so much for joining. And Chris, thank you again for sharing your insights. You are one of the most passionate, most insightful people that we've talked to in this space. So I'm so glad we were able to share that with everyone here today. Thank you so much for joining. We're Epoch. If you have any questions in terms of the L&D space or all the incredible things that Chris is doing, please let us know. We're also happy to connect you directly with Chris as well if you can't find him on LinkedIn. With that, Chris, thank you so much today. I know it's been a crazy day for you, onboarding new hires, and everything else that's going on.
Yeah, definitely highlighted my day, Jay. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. We'll chat again soon. Bye, everyone.